All right. Well, I want to start right on time because I know your time is valuable and I want to make sure that we cover everything. And we only have a limited amount of time. I just want to thank you and welcome you to the Curiosity Code Index webinar. I want to make sure everybody can hear me. If you can't, feel free to click on raise your hand or ask a question at any time. I'm going to answer questions at the end if possible. But if I don't reach everybody's answer every single question, please feel free to email me at diane@drdianehamilton.com. But I'm going to do my best to answer all the questions. This session is designed to provide more information for those of you who are considering getting certified to give the Curiosity Code Index, or I'll refer to it as the CCI assessment. I'm Dr. Diane Hamilton, and I'm the creator of the Curiosity Code Index, CCI, and the author of the book, Cracking the Curiosity Code. And I designed this webinar to give you more background regarding the importance of curiosity, the research behind the CCI, and then as we go through the content here, I'm going to provide more information about the half-day virtual certification process. And then we'll end with some Q&A. So feel free to ask questions as they come up, and then I will address them at the end. Happy to answer all of your questions. And if you've not read it, please check out this, the book, and you can take the CCI later if you haven't taken it already. But for those of you who have read the book, you might have noticed a lot of top names in leadership who have endorsed it, including Steve Forbes, billionaires Ken Fisher and Keith Krach, top HR thought leaders like Dave Ulrich and Vern Harnish, just to name a few. And it's for good reason. They see the value of curiosity. And as Vern Harnish said, my work in the area of developing curiosity could foreseeably be the next movement to enhance human performance. So for those of you looking to be more relevant, on the cutting edge, and just want to have a new instrument to make a difference out there, the CCI is unlike anything that you've seen. So I kind of want to begin by sharing a thought experiment that helps explore why curiosity can be so important to avoiding status quo thinking. You may have seen this, where investigators set up a hidden camera experiment in a doctor's office. And a woman went in for an eye exam, and unbeknownst to her, everyone around her was in on the experiment, where they rang a bell. And every time they rang the bell, everybody around her would stand up and sit down without explanation. And after just 3 times of people doing this, she looked around and she did the same thing as they did. She stood up and she sat down. And they thought, well, isn't this interesting that she followed status quo thinking? So they decided what would happen if they took everybody out of the office to see how she would respond while she was by herself. And when they rang the bell, once everybody had been called back out of the room, she still stood up and sat down. So they thought, well, let's add more people to the room to see what she'll do, as these people are actual patients going in to see the doctor and see what will happen. The bell rang, she stood up and sat down, and the first patient who had come into the room was sitting next to her and said, well, why did you do that? And she said, because everybody else was doing it, I thought I was supposed to. So what do you think happens the next time the bell rings? Well, he gets up and sits down with her, and so does everybody else who enters the room as patients. So it's something that it's really important, because we call this social learning. And we see that when others do something and then we do the same thing, because we don't want to feel excluded. And we're conforming, right? It's comfortable. But when we do that, it stunts our growth, and it causes us to have status quo thinking. And that's the downfall of organizations. And that's what I was trying to work on with developing curiosity. Because we need to go beyond, we need to ask why. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we standing up and sitting down when the bell rings, right? Why is this important? And so that's what I researched. And I just wanted to just let you know that this is what I do. My job is to be curious. Whether I ask questions for a living as a researcher, or if I do it through my radio show or my teaching or my speaking, that's what I do. And I like to obtain information and share it. And I think it's really interesting, whether experts were on my show from Harvard or Stanford, or the people I talked about before who reviewed the book, no matter what I ask them, what came first? Is it curiosity or creativity, or curiosity or motivation? No matter what the topic, they all say curiosity came first. So my goal here is to help you just explore the value of that and determine ways that you can help overcome the things that hold you and organizations back from developing curiosity. So to kind of make it simpler, I think it's easier to look at a real world example of what it is that that curiosity does. If you take a look at, let's say you bake a cake in real life. Let's look at it that way. You have all these ingredients and you know you want it to have this end product of a cake. So you mix all the eggs and the flour and everything together. You put it in the oven. And what happens? Well, nothing happens if you don't turn on the oven. And that's what happens in the working world. We have all these ingredients of motivation and engagement and all these innovation, and we're trying to get productivity, but nobody's turning on the oven. And the oven, that spark that ignites it all, is curiosity. So what we find is that kids have a natural level of curiosity. I love this picture because it's from San Francisco Museum of Art Life magazine in 1963. So these little girls are supposed to be looking at all this unbelievable artwork on the wall, but what do? They look through the grate, right? They want to see what's behind the vent. And that's what we do. 3-year-olds ask all of these questions. We know that kids are super curious when they're young. But there's something that happens when we start to age. And if you look at some of the statistics out there, we know that at about age 5, we're really seeing a marked decline. And that's what organizations are struggling with. We have all these people who have lost their natural sense of curiosity. If you listen to Sir Ken Robinson's incredible TED Talk, he talks about how we're maybe educating people out of our curiosity and creativity. And so does Professor George Land has a similar kind of talk about his work with NASA, where at the age of 5, children had like a 98% creative genius level, but by the time they're in their 30s, it drops to less than 2%. So the numbers aren't that different no matter who you look at. We see a big increase until they're about 5 and then a sharp decline. And so that's what I thought was really interesting to research. And that's what I just wanted to share some of the other reports that are out there so you know what other research there is. We know that larger companies have more curiosity than smaller ones. We know millennials are slightly more curious than Gen Z or boomers. The US is more curious than China, but not as curious as Germany. And we know that American workers are working really long hours, but they're not the highest in productivity. So what's wrong? Well, we know that curiosity is important. And that's what I really want to focus on, because I think that there's a lot of research out there, but there's nothing like this. And what companies are losing in investing in creating this atmosphere, they're not getting back the money that they're spending on all these assessments and things, because they're not starting at the beginning. They're not starting with the spark. And so I think looking at costs is really important if you're going to organizations to talk about why they might want to look at their curiosity levels, because of course that's what CEOs are thinking about. And it doesn't matter which website you pick, how many billions it says on it, because every website has a different research study that they quote, but we know it's tens of billions that they're losing due to low emotional intelligence levels. And a lot of that ties into, we have a lot of interpersonal skills problems and empathy problems. We know that 96% of employees think that showing empathy is important for employee retention, but we're not seeing the leaders do that. And you know, you're kind of a mediator between employees and leaders, and so you're the heart of helping people overcome these huge challenges. So you know, one of the biggest parts of emotional intelligence is developing empathy. And I think that I actually wrote my dissertation on emotional intelligence. So I think that building empathy is something that we hear a lot of. We know Tony Alessandra wrote, you know, about we don't need the golden rule anymore. We need the platinum rule. You know, we need to treat others as they would want to be treated rather than as we'd want to be treated. So it's really important how we look at this. And, you know, I've worked in organizations where they kind of taught the empathy and the listening skills and all these great training things that we think we need out of us. And that has led to a lot of problems with communication and conflict. I mean, if you think about it, communication is always one of the most cited problems for what we see in the workplace. We have so many people that can't get along, and it's costing a lot of money. As I mentioned, you know, organizations can train us out of our ability to really communicate well. When I was a pharmaceutical rep, this is what I envisioned every doctor looked like. And the reason for that is they told us that, you know, we had to give these sales presentations and you have to talk and say this and get this in, and you've got 3 products you have to get through to these guys, and you'll have just no time. And they kind of almost overwhelm employees to the point where they're afraid to ask questions. They're afraid to explore different alternatives and different ways of doing things because they know they have to do this one thing. They have to get out their message. And I remember going on a doctor's call with a guy. I remember just the first time I got back to talk to him, I actually got in all 3 products the way they taught us. But the problem was, when I walked out of the office, I was so proud of myself. I thought, oh, wow, that is so great that I got in all 3 products. But I hadn't really given much thought to how the conversation went. And as I went down to go get my samples, I'm in the elevator and the door's about to close and a guy gets on the elevator with me. And because I'm an extrovert and can't go a few floors without talking, I said, "So, do you work in the building?" And he looked at me with this really mortified look and he said, you just detailed me or sold me. He's the doctor that I just had talked to. And the problem was, I didn't ask him any questions. I didn't listen. I didn't explore what his issues were, what I could do to help him. And that's what we're having in the workplace. We're training people into just communicating one way. And the problem is no one's pointing it out to us. No one's getting on the elevator with us and saying, hey, that was really stupid, what you just did. Because we think that it's okay because that's the way it's always been done. And that's one of the problems that's leading to poor engagement. And people just don't really feel invested in what they do. We know that there's so much talk about Gallup survey, for example. It's in the hundreds of billions in their results. And a lot of people quote that number. But a lot of engagement issues could be helped if we just ask some questions, we explore some curiosity. And I am going to get into how we're going to do that with the Curiosity Code Index, but I want to give you this background, these numbers, because I think that all this is really important when you're trying to talk to leaders and organizations about the costs involved. So let's look at what Disney did in terms of engagement, and they did in terms of turnover. If you think about working at Disney, you don't probably picture this guy, right? You don't think that there's this unglamorous type of situation that exists, but somebody at Disney's doing laundry, and it's not a fun job. And they were losing a lot of people because they just didn't like what they did. So basically they thought, well, how can we get these people more engaged and more excited about their jobs? Which is not really easy to do when you're ironing and folding laundry all day. But they just asked them a simple question. And that question was, what can we do to make your job better? And what was really surprising to them was how simple the answers were that they got back. I mean, they really thought they're going to get back these answers of, that they wouldn't be able to solve because it'd be too expensive and too time consuming or whatever it was. And instead they got back kind of simple things. They got back answers like put an air conditioning vent over my desk where I work, so I have better ventilation, or have the table move up and down so my back doesn't hurt. But the point is they asked questions to find out the solutions to their problems, because we know that there's going to be a lot of problems. We know that innovation is going to be taking over. We know this guy, like Pepper or somebody like him, might be taking half the jobs out there in the next 20 years, right? So the problem is nobody wants to be left behind when all this happens. And we know that there's companies that have been left behind. We all know of the Kodaks and the Netflix examples. I mean, Netflix pitched the offer to Blockbuster, right? And so Netflix survived, Blockbuster didn't, because Blockbuster looked at things from the old way, their old models, the things that worked from in the past. And to quote Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. And that's the same thing that Kodak did when they could have gone with digital photography. So no one wants to be the one left behind, but that's what's going to happen if we don't work on curiosity, because as I said, curiosity is the spark. And in my book, Cracking the Curiosity Code, for those of you who've read it, I hope you all have, there's a lot of examples in there. And one of them was the hospital and race car example. And you might, if you haven't read the book, you might be wondering, what does a hospital and a race car have in common? But England's Great Ormond Street Hospital treats heart patients, and they were having a really high number of patients that were dying, actually, when they were being transferred from one unit to another. And no matter what they tried all their old, proven, tried and true methods, nothing was improving their efficiency. So a couple of the executives were actually watching a Formula One race car, and I think it was Ferrari. I can't remember exactly if it was Ferrari, but they had watched this pit crew put together and take apart the car in like 7 seconds. They took everything apart, put it back together, and no problems. And they were just overwhelmed by how efficient this was and how well they were able to do this. And they thought, well, what if these guys came back and watched what we were doing and gave us some examples and some feedback? And that's what they did. And they got maybe, I think, 3 different ideas that they put into place, and it helped their efficiency by 50%. So I thought this was really important as I started my research about curiosity, because I think it's really important to look into what we know and what is has been written out there. So if you're talking to organizations, a lot of them are familiar with Daniel Pink's work on the book Drive, or his TED Talk, which was excellent, by the way. If you haven't seen it, I totally recommend it. He examined the puzzle of motivation. And so he was looking at traditional rewards of whether we're, what incentivizes us and that kinds of things. And his focus was on intrinsic motivation. But all the motivation experts who've been on my show have all, admitted that you need curiosity to be motivated. So here we know it's the spark again. We go to that. And then if we look at Simon Sinek's work with, finding your why and all that, he's talking about purpose, right? Again, he talks about being emotionally committed to a job, and all of the things he talks about is human behavior that all again begins with having curiosity. And even Carol Dweck's work on mindset ties into if you have an open, a growth or a fixed mindset. And we know that these are really important things, because there's something that's called the curiosity gene, which you probably read about in the book. And when we activate that, we get this dopamine rush. We feel better. It's like you eat a chocolate bar, or you've gone to the gym, if you like going to the gym, or that type of thing where you feel so much better. But what was interesting to me is that there's assessments out there that'll tell you how curious you are. You're super curious, you're not so curious, or that type of thing. But there's nothing out there that determines what keeps you from being curious. And that's what interested me. I mean, we know about the big 5 factors of personality, that there's openness to experience. But again, that's how curious you are. And so I think that what's interesting is we look at what's holding us back. If it's the spark, where did it go? How do we find it? And that's what I wanted to talk about. So here we are talking about the research and what you guys would be interested in most, and that the spark is curiosity, and why this research is different. And I think that a lot of you guys are tired of giving emotional intelligence tests or DISC tests, and I think they're all really great. I give them. I'm certified to give a lot of different assessments. But I think that this is something so unique, because you can be relevant. You can have something in your arsenal to help with innovation. Anybody hearing the word innovation? Right, like every single sentence. So you want to be able to go to leaders and have something that can make a difference. You just don't want to have another organizing into categories kind of thing. And this is not like that. So a lot of people will ask me, why did I create another assessment? And for me, it's because if you don't know what holds you back, you can't move forward. So you need to get a baseline measurement on the things that hold you back. And sometimes quantifying that can be challenging. But since no one had done this, I spent years of exploration into this. I had several psychometric statisticians and researched thousands of people to get this data. And I found out the 4 factors that keep you from being curious. And if you're curious, let's cover them. So the 4 factors are fear, assumptions, technology, environment, which the acronym of FATE. And I want to go through them quickly before we talk about the Curiosity Code Index training, because I think this is all very important to decide if that's something right for you. So we know fear is huge for a lot of people. And I think that when I first started studying this, that's the first thing that I learned. I actually put a thread into a LinkedIn group to ask people what held them back from being curious. And a lot of people don't want to look stupid. They don't want to look unprepared. They are in meetings. We've all been in meetings, and you want to ask a question and you think, I'm not going to ask that. What if no one else is thinking that? So you lean next to Bob and you go, hey, Bob, why don't you ask? Because you want Bob. Better Bob looks stupid than you, right? So it's something that we all experience, because it'll paralyze us into inaction. We've all had the boss that does this to us, right? And I know I've had one who I actually had a guy who he asked me to do something and I didn't know how to do it. And I'd never done it before. So I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. How do I do that? And he looked at me and he's just so disgusted, said, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, he thinks I'm an idiot, or he thinks my boss that I had before was an idiot for not training me, or I don't know. But what does it do to employees when they do that? It's going to tell them, well, you're an idiot, or don't ask questions, or pretend you know stuff that you don't really know, so don't be honest. And so people will do that. They'll ask things and then get shut down. Or they might have gone to somebody who says, don't come to me with problems unless you have solutions. And that really kind of sounded good when we first heard it, in a way, because it's kind of made sense. Oh, we don't want whiners. But then nobody's going to come to us if they see a problem, if they're not capable of finding solutions. So I think that some of this stuff needs to be discussed. And I have a lot of great people who've been on my show who have been able to get over the fears that they have. Halina Gombe was one. She was able to cross rivers and get an education when other people were held back by their fear. And a lot of people just become paralyzed by it. And that's what I would like to do, is to get people to understand that there's so much we can do to help people get past their fears. The second factor I found in researching this was assumptions, or the voice in your head. And what I think of when I think of the voice in your head is this, Dr. Katz had a cartoon, I think it was on Nickelodeon or one of those shows, where it reminded me of the old Bob Newhart kind of thing, where he would have guests as patients every week on the couch, and they were always comedians. And I remember the one comedian said he didn't mind the voice in his head so much, he just wished it didn't have a stutter. So that's what I think of when I think about the voice in our head, because we have this voice in our head, right? And I like to demonstrate it when I'm at presentations with a glass of water. I'll hold up a glass and I'll say, how heavy is this water, as I hold it up in the air? And usually somebody will yell out, 6 ounces or 4 ounces or 10 ounces or however big it looks. And the point is, the weight doesn't matter. What matters is how long I hold it, right? If it's a minute, it doesn't bother me much. After an hour, my arm starts to ache. And then if I hold it for a long time, my arm starts to feel paralyzed. So the weight never changes, how long I held onto it. Well, that's how these fears and worries and voices in our heads work with us, right? If they're fleeting, no big deal. If we hold on to it for an hour, it bothers us more. And then, if we really hold on to it, then we become paralyzed. And so we need to put the glass down. And so that's what a lot of us are trying to do in the workplace. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about, how we're going to do that. And some of my people I talk to in my interviews are great at getting through the voice in their heads. Eric Maer, the first blind man to hike all the peaks, and the heavy duty hiker. He did the Grand Canyon river rafting blind, right? He was able to let go of the voices in their heads. And that's what I'd like to have the ability to share with people, is the type of thing he was able to do. So I want to talk about the third of the factors, and that's technology. And technology has been an influencer in so many ways. And I kind of like this picture just because it shows old and new technology, because it changes a lot, right? And there's a lot of older people out there who have problems with technology. This isn't my mom, but I think of my mom when I talk about this, because sometimes older generations are just overwhelmed with it. And we don't have maybe people of this age in the workplace, but we have a lot of people that weren't really raised with technology. And they freak out. They think they're going to break something. They think, they underutilize technology. But we have the opposite of people who overutilize technology. They Google everything or ask Echo everything. And it's challenging. I know that with my mom, for example, you have a parent, you give technology, you become tech support, right? Because they do not want to figure it out for themselves. And that's what I want to change in people. I want to help people have that desire to if their computer crashes, that's cool, because they want to fix it, right? And I think there's a lot of people like Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, as you know, who he's an older guy. He's not the youngest guy. He's great, obviously, with technology, because his father would bring home all these gadgets and wires and things and tell him how everything worked together, and helped him really understand the whole reality behind why things work the way they do. And I think that we really have the ability to have an environment that's positive. But environment, the fourth factor, is something that can really hold people back. And I mean, whether it's your family, your friends, your peers, your coworkers, or social media. I mean, think about it. We all want people to like whatever it is we're saying. We want to go along with the status quo. We want to stand up and sit down every time the bell rings so that we get these thumbs up, these hearts, these likes, right? And it's not that simple, because to actually do something that's relevant and different and builds on the next level of innovation, we might have to go against the grain. Maybe what our friends all like isn't the best thing. Maybe what our parents told us for a degree isn't the best degree for us. Maybe all the things that we've been telling ourselves or thinking about all these years really are kind of holding us back. And I've interviewed people like Xander Lurie, the CEO of SurveyMonkey. And, you know, they do a lot of things at different companies like SurveyMonkey to, you know, to improve curiosity. They work on how can they make their products better? How can they make their workers' environment better? How can they do the best work of their lives? And then how can they just build a collaborative culture? So they do a lot of mentorship programs. They do a lot of skip level meetings so that maybe if you're having an issue with somebody you direct report to, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can work on with people. But I think it's really important just to look at these four factors and get a good idea of how they hold you back. Now, what I thought was interesting was how evenly dispersed these were. I kind of expected one to be much more, you know, than another. And these are thousands of surveys of results. And it's pretty even. I mean, some of them overlap. You can have fear of technology and that type of thing. But I really think it's kind of fascinating to see that all of these factors are problematic for people. And that's why I created this Curiosity Code Index assessment, to be sure that we can find a way to help people with this. And, you know, I train consultants all the time and HR professionals. And what I do is to make sure that you're able to understand how to give this Curiosity Code Index. Hopefully you've taken it. If not, you still can take it. And if you go through the Curiosity Code Index certification program, that entitles you to 5 hours of SHRM recertification training and access to all kinds of materials. But I want to give you a little bit of an overview, because I know this is where you probably want to know more about the depth of it. And if you can either go to curiositycode.com or drdianehamilton.com to get here. I'm showing you the drdianehamilton.com, how to get to it from there. At the top, where it's next to, you know, where my red arrows are here at the top of the screen, if you click on the Curiosity Code system, it'll drop down the book, the index, and the CCI certification. So if you've already read the book and taken the index and you just want to become CCI certified, you click on the CCI certification final link. But it's all the same thing if you go to curiositycode.com. Now, if you've taken this Curiosity Code Index, you've seen the report. But if you haven't, and even if you have, I want to go through what you're going to see when you go through certification training. Because when you go through the certification training, you're going to take the assessment first and have those results with you for the training. And what you get, this is just a few pages from that report. And the whole report, I think, is 26 pages. But you're going to get overviews of different things. This one shows an overview of fear, but you will get overview of all the four factors, and you'll get scores for all the factors. And if you look on these charts that show the red and yellow and green bars, those are what you've answered for the 36 questions. And for each of those questions, you get a score. So the more green the score, the better you did. The less green the score, maybe are more problematic for you. So you're going to know how to read these. You know, this whole PDF is part of what we train you to do in the CCI training, so that if you understand yours, you're able to explain it to other people when they go through theirs. So it does give you a lot of feedback. It tells you your score overall for everything as well. It tells you how to, you know, create strategies. And even if you just took this on your own through the site, you can create an action plan that's just a personal action plan that gets you through, you know, your troubled areas. But as like with emotional intelligence tests or DISC or different things, it's always better to have somebody who is certified to give this assessment to explain it. And plus there's other factors that you're able to understand that they wouldn't be able to get if they just took this on their own. So I want to kind of show you, this was a recent certification class I gave in Arizona for a small group. And what they were doing was writing in their notebook. And at the end, I'm going to give you access to get that free notebook so you can take a look at it and you'll be able to download that. But basically what they do is they do two activities. There's a personal practices activity, which is kind of what we just saw that you could do online, which is your individual action plan to improve. And I think that that's really important because you're able to create really measurable ways to come over the obstacles that have set you, back in your work and in your life experiences. So that you would actually go through their report with them, all the pages, everybody is a really interactive experience. And then what they're doing now is creating actionable items, kind of a personal SWOT analysis to get through the first activity that they will go through. But there's actually two activities, so I wanted to kind of show you, and I know it's a little bit busy screen, but it'll make more sense as I explain it. The first activity that they work on is the top part of the screen. They figure out their issue, they think about their goals, and they make it really measurable. Any goal you want to have a SMART goal, so you're going to have it time bound, and you're going to have outcomes and all the support and the potential issues you might run into as you would like a SWOT analysis, how you're going to overcome those. And then once they go through all that, this is a really personal kind of private thing that they may not want to share their results. So it's like emotional intelligence, that this is something you're doing in the privacy of this room with them, that you don't share this with leadership. But once they've gone through that, they get the real idea of what you're trying to do. They understand this is how we can improve curiosity, and these are my issues, and this is what I want to overcome. And that really leads well into the second activity, which is at the bottom of the screen, which is the overall leadership report. And if you look at that, you're looking at all the top issues. I've listed some of them here, and this is not an exhaustive list. But if you go to leaders and you find out what their most problematic issues are, usually you're going to hear communication, leadership, critical thinking, all these things, engagement, innovation. These are the kinds of things in the second activity you'll learn how to do in the Curiosity Code Index training. You will learn how to get them through that exercise in the manual that they will have and that you will have. And this is the kind of thing that you do bring back to leadership. And this is the real meat of why you'd want to get certified right here, because knowing how to do all of this and create this report to give back to leaders is, the big selling feature for what leaders are going to want to hear. Think of the Disney example I gave you earlier. They simply went to the horse's mouth, right? How can we help you to help, how can we make your job better? And just asking questions like that help them improve the company as a whole. Well, this is the same kind of thing. We're going to the horse's mouth. You're saying, what can we do to make your communication better, to build curiosity, and make your job better in terms of communicating? What can we do as leaders? And so if you get this whole group of people together and they come up with all these different ideas, it's a great whiteboarding exercise. It's a great way you can, everybody can play off one another and build on the board. And I've seen it done a lot of different ways. But if you work on this that way, then you come with all these ideas, you get back to leaders, and it's all anonymous. So people can feel free to share because it's all compiled into one report that you give back to leaders. And I think that that's really, I've taught the training courses, the consultants are the most thrilled when they get to do this exercise because they really see value in this, and leaders really see value in this. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, of how we were laying out the training. So when you go through the training, I just wanted to show you what it kind of looks like. It's very simple. Whenever you get into the curiositycode.com and you've bought your assessment or you've signed up to do anything, you go back to your dashboard to get into the course. And as you can see, the dashboard's up here and all that. So anytime you want to come back, just go to the dashboard and you can get in. But the course is really simple. This shows that I just took the assessment just to take a print screen and to show you what it looks like if you've passed. But it takes about 4 hours or so. And you can go in and out of it as you please. It's very, very simple the way it's laid out. I didn't want to make this complicated because in my certifications for Myers-Briggs and emotional intelligence and all the certifications I've gone through, I know they made you fly out and take all these days worth of training. And I didn't want to make people go through that because I don't think it's necessary. I think that I think you guys know how to be consultants and you know how to do a lot of that stuff. But what this is teaching you is this kind of stuff that we're talking about, the reason behind curiosity, in case you want to, learn the kinds of things that we're talking about today, the way to explain the value of it to leaders, because there's so much value that you've been added by going through this. So basically you take a 10-question quiz, which is really simple, and I think you could take it multiple times. So it's pretty easy to get through that part. And then when you're done, you're going to get a certification that entitles you to 5 hours of SHRM recertification credit. You'll get, the logo to put on your site. If you want to put on LinkedIn, you put on your credit card, your business cards or whatever. You'll get the certificate so you can prove your SHRM recertification hours. And you'll also have discounted assessments. Right now we're offering 20% off if you're CCI certified, the assessments. So if you were going to an organization and you wanted to give it to them, you'd get it at a discounted rate. We're not capping the rate right now of what you can charge, which makes it, really nice for you to decide how you want to provide this. Some people bundle it with other assessments, and it's just something that there's no one offering it. And I think that everybody I talk to is really excited about this. We just have such big names behind it. You can pull up the research that's been published in peer-reviewed journals about it. This has been validated in research. So it's something that is very unique. But just one last shot of the dashboard, so once you've taken the assessment, you come back out, you can go back into the site and view your certificate later. If you notice under the index certification, when the first time you go in, it'll say take it, the assessment. The next time you go in, it'll say view certificate. So if you need to find your certificate later, it'll be emailed to you, but that's another way you can get it. But I think a lot of people are interested in handling objections. And that's something that I think, I gave the example of when I was in pharmaceuticals of how you can't just talk at them. You really have to find out what their pain points are. And I think that asking them, to really take a look at curiosity, we know that the majority of leaders will say that they think that they are making the workplace value curiosity, but less than half in reality of employees believe that they are. So, having data is really important when you go to them if you have somebody who's a very data-driven person. So I just think you need to realize that there's so many issues that they're having with innovation and maybe tying into their emotions as you're talking to them. Just, how you can make this pain go away. And if you're talking to somebody who needs this kind of validation for what they're doing, it helps to just say things like, because I heard you say you'd like to be more innovative in our culture, or, how would it feel in 6 months or 12 months if we turned XYZ around, and so there's a lot of things you can do to really paint the picture of this. And this is really something that I think that a lot of people might have issues. They're worried they don't have enough time, or there's no bandwidth or whatever because they're giving so many assessments or whatever. But this isn't putting people in boxes. This is not let's all take a card and stand in a corner. I'm a D, I'm going to wave over here at the I. And I know DISC is a really important assessment, but I think they know that they've done that, and they might be associating that you're trying to do something similar. And this is completely different. And I think it needs to be painted that way. And I think that all of them are really important, and I think that they should be complementary, because I give the DISC and the emotional intelligence test all the time. They're huge, they're important, but this is just something next level. This is blazing new trails, and we need to recognize what's holding us back so that we can look outside of our silos and our teams and our companies, and even outside of our industries, like they did in the hospital, right? Because there's other answers out there, but we just have to learn how to ask the questions. So I know when you're working with HR people, there's things that they do. They hire curious people, but we want to make sure that we're helping everybody model curiosity and bridge communication gaps and ask questions. And I had Francesca Gino in an interview once, she's the Harvard professor, talking about having what if, why not days, how might we days. And you can suggest all kinds of suggestions to them of things they can do to improve curiosity. So just want you to think about this, that the future does belong to the curious. We want them to be not afraid to try it, explore it, poke at it, question it, and set it free. And that's really what we're trying to do. And I want to make sure that I talked about how you can have that workbook, and that's developcuriosity.com if you want to download it. When you go through the training, I'll give you a PDF of it if you'd like, which is really nice if you print it up, but it costs a lot more to do it that way. This developcuriosity.com gives you a much less beautiful looking book, but it's because it's something that could be cheap. And I wanted to make sure that we weren't overcharging for a lot of that stuff. You can get it on Amazon, all the materials that I give you. But I let you have the options. You can go to Amazon to order the workbooks or the book, or you can get the workbooks through the website and then just print them on your own and have them done in a really nice, graphically pleasing way. So if I wanted to take any questions, if anybody has any questions, you can go up to the bar and click on the Q&A area. I already see that we have one. Can the curiosity code index be taken without reading the book? That's a good question. Yes, you can. However, I recommend you read the book as well. You want to have a solid background regarding the importance of curiosity. I mean, you get some of the training, but there's so much more in the book. You can't put it all into 4 hours of training. So they're complementary. The book is hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook, so they can get it in whatever way they want. But that is something that I think is really important. Another question, who should take the CCI? That's a good question. This is meant for anyone in the business world, really. If you want to get a baseline measurement on the factors that impact their curiosity and help them overcome the issues with curiosity, that kind of is everybody, right? I mean, it's kind of, I would put it in the same league as who you give the DISC, emotional intelligence, MBTI, engagement surveys, personality assessments in general. So I would say just about anyone in the working world, it's appropriate for. I wouldn't say I would use it as a screening mechanism in the hiring process, but I think that once people are in, I would use it more for that. And is it a valid instrument? Yes, it took years to develop this, so yes, it is a valid instrument. Factor analysis was performed, so we make sure that it's capturing what we're trying to measure, and so yes. What companies have already implemented the CCI? What successes have they noted after its implementation? Well, you know, the CCI just came out this year, so we have numerous companies in the process of it. So I don't have the success data yet because it's just so new. But I can say that they're looking at it at large organizations like DocuSign has requested information on it. Right now it's in the Netherlands. We're talking to them. A large company over there. I've had discussions with Salesforce, and a lot of other very well-known organizations are very much interested in this. So I wish I had more success data, but since it's so new, I don't have that yet. Somebody's asked, would it be best implemented for smaller or larger businesses? I don't think it really matters. I think that it should be for every organization out there. I think we know that the larger organization had higher levels of curiosity than the smaller companies, but you might see more results in the smaller companies just because of that. But I think it's a solution that everybody can get value out of, no matter what size the organization is. So basically, trying to think if there was anything else on these questions. I'm looking back. I think that the biggest difference from the CCI from other assessments is, like I had mentioned earlier, that we're not measuring what level of curiosity they have. We're measuring the factors that keep people from being curious. And that's huge because there's Cashton and Littman and a lot of people at Harvard that created these assessments that'll tell you if you're curious or not. But that isn't giving you the same data. That is just telling you on a scale of how curious you are. this is actually giving you usable information of how to overcome the factors that are holding you back. So, you know, I think that that's a really huge thing. Now, a lot of people want to know who should administer the CCI. That would be something that, you know, consultants are doing, HR people can do, consultants sometimes train the HR people, you know, so it varies based on the company. I think that it's really important that whoever administers it goes through the CCI certification course. They don't have to, but to go, if you do, then you get the certification, 5 hours of free certification credit from SHRM, and you also get discounts. So someone asked, once implemented, how frequently should a company reperform the CCI? You don't need to reperform this version. We're coming up with other versions that can be follow-up assessments. For this is more like the MBTI, where you give it once because it's asking about past behaviors and things that basically will remain similar. So this is a one-time assessment for now, but we are developing more instruments, so that'll be interesting to see what other areas that this can take. I'm also working on other assessments in the area of perception and different behavioral issues. So you can feel free to go to my site and sign up to receive information as we come up with new things. But this has just received so much attention because there's nothing like it, as I said. And leaders realize they have to be more innovative, and they have to align people ahead and where they want to be in this innovation game. As we're knowing that half the jobs are going to be automated, right? So where are we going to put people? And if they're not engaged right now, we know less than 1/3 of the workplace is engaged. Wouldn't it be great to move them somewhere where they would be engaged and be much more interested to do what they're doing? And the only way we could do that is to allow them to explore things, to ask questions, and to develop their level of curiosity. So that's the whole package of what we're trying to do for people. So I think that I just want to make sure I covered everything that you want to know about the CCI certification. Really what you would do is go to curiositycode.com or drdianehamilton.com, and you can become certified by going to the certification class there. As I said, it's a half a day, whenever you want to take it, so don't have to travel, makes it easy. And you would immediately be certified and be able to access, the assessments later on at a discounted rate. You'll get your certification logos and everything else at that time. And if there's anything you need, you can always contact me at Diane at drdianehamilton.com. So just want to make sure I'm answering every question out there. I know there was a lot, and I know we're, I was trying to keep it short so that you guys could get back to your work. But thank you for attending. And if there's anything I could answer, please contact me. And I hope that you guys are curious enough to share the curiosity with everybody else. So everybody have a great day, and thank you.